Hey everyone, it's Jason. Today we're going to look at another game from the Unstable Games universe, Tic Tac K.O. Dragons versus Unicorns. This is by the same guys that make all the Unstable Unicorn games, Here to Slay, Wrong Party, so you're going to get that familiar artwork, and, a little bit of goofiness to it. So this is it can be a 2 to 4 player game, which is interesting, but it's essentially Tic Tac Toe with extra rules. So it's actually pretty fun. It can be played a couple different ways, which is really nice too. And since it's Dragons versus Unicorns, there's definitely a potential to add more expansions because you have one person plays as Dragons and one person plays as Unicorns. So Orange versus Blue, you can easily add in the other sets, just all the Unstable Unicorn set they have. Llamas Unleashed, they have llamas, rams, sheep, and alpacas, so there's 4 more different ones. You get to Here to Slay, they have, the bears, the unicorns, the bunny rabbits, they have all these other different things. So they could easily add 2 more verses, and then be like, now you can buy it and have 4 players each playing a different deck, or whatever. So let's hop in and look at this. Yes, this is fairly new. So hop and look at it. For everything you thought you knew about Tic Tac Toe, now remember a little bit of it. Tic Tac K.O. is a 2 to 4 player game. The players compete. Players vie control for the grid by playing character cards and filling objectives. So this is a little bit different because so each player's gonna have a 40 card deck. There's an objective deck and you have a grid. Basically, and the grid can be played in 2 different ways. What you're trying to do is not directly get Tic Tac Toe, like just trying to get 3 in a row. But you have objective cards that tell you what to do. So here's all the instructions, and rather than me sitting here reading through all of these, I'm actually just going to pull up the grid and kind of explain to it that way. But it also says you can play 4 players, which is neat. So then you have 2 players per each team. So player 1 goes, then player 2, then 3, then 4. So you can play a little bit differently that way. There's this grid that can be played standard or advanced gameplay. Different types of cards. There's basic cards, special cards, character cards. There are magic cards, instant cards, and objective cards. And then there's a bunch of different things that specify what they mean. And there's a 2-player variant, so you just do stuff a little bit differently. Or a 3-player, so you can have 2 versus 1. But that's all up to you. So let's explain what this is. So this is actually kind of odd, because you get, instead of getting a board, you're going to get this big paper grid. But it's going to have 1 through 9, which is your standard tic-tac-toe board. But then it also has an A through G. An A through G extra thing. So what you're going to do is each player is going to start the game off with these objective cards. And there's a bunch of different ones. And each player gets one. So if this is your card, what you're trying to do is, if you're playing standard, you need to place your cards in these 3 spots. If you're playing advanced, you also have a 4th spot. And that's why I said it's sort of like tic-tac-toe, because you're going to get a lot of them. You need to get 3 in a row or 4 in a row. So on and so forth. So a lot of them are like your tic-tac-toe 3 in a row. But then some of them, now they went and added, like, cross, but they did add different amounts. Just so you can cover all the different spots. So there's some that go that way, this one does that corner. So there are different ones that do different things. And you can play either way. You just have to decide before playing which way you're going. Because if you're only going to do the 9 grid, you're only going to place cards in this area. If you're doing the other one, you might place them on the outside. I played my first game, I just played with the outside. I honestly thought it was more fun. Because I kind of feel like these cards would be hard to tell. But like lots of these other ones, like if I'm playing this, and my opponent puts a card here, and then puts a card here or here, I'm going to know that they need to put a card there, and I'm going to know to block it. or even if they're playing the advance, if I see them put 2 cards here, I'm going to know I need to block these spots. So it makes it a little bit like regular Tic Tac Toe. You can see where they're going. But then when you add something like this, where it's those 3, but then the C's there. So if they play a C and a 7 here, then my thoughts can be, oh, they're going to play 2 there. But then they have to get 2 up there. And there's that strategy of you trying to complete your stuff while blocking your opponent's stuff. And just to kind of show how that's going to work is, so like on your turn you play a card. So like I'm player 1, I could play my card there, and then player 2 could play a card there, so on and so forth. And now that just seems like, well, it's just like Tic Tac Toe, whoever gets to play it first. Except you're going to get cards that have special abilities that do different things. It'll move guys around and stuff like that. So that's the big thing there, is they're gonna get do various things every turn. So your phase consists of a draw phase. You draw a card from the top of your deck, add it to your hand. Action phase, play a character or magic card from your hand. If you cannot or do not want to play a card, you may draw a second card instead. And now this could be because you have a card that says play this and it moves this card or destroys this card, and there's not something viable enough for you to do that. You might hold off and just wait, like, I don't want to use these cards yet. But that's basically it. Draw a card, and then either play a card or don't play a card. Next player's turn. So we're going to jump in, and we're just going to look at the different... I'm just going to close this grid up, just so it's not in our way. And then we're going to look at these decks. So we're going to look at the unicorns first. So I have mine. These are special sleeves that you can purchase on the Unstable Unicorns website or Unstable Games site. These do not come with the game. Just to clarify, the sleeves don't come with the game. I started buying heavier duty sleeves from the Unstable Games store for all their games because these get shuffled so often. I wanted nicer sleeves than the penny sleeves that they come with. Or, not they come with it, I buy. Usually for all my games, I usually put penny sleeves in all my cards. Just, so if they're getting shuffled, it keeps them. But since the Unstable games get shuffled so often, like during the game, because you put cards down, you're going to reshuffle, put cards down, you're going to reshuffle, as opposed to, like, maybe playing, like, a game of Marvel Legendary where you shuffle the deck the first time, then it's probably not going to get shuffled again because you're not going to run it out. So it's not so bad, but these get shuffled so often. Alright, so we're going to get basic unicorn cards or basic dragon cards. They don't do anything special. They just take up a spot. So you have 2 copies of Tiny Hooves. These are little baby ones. We have Angie, 2 copies. 2 copies of Pegels. And 2 copies of Yum Yum. So each deck is going to have 2 copies of each of these 4 characters. So that's consistent. And then we're going to get special unicorns, or special dragons. This will be unicorns. So we have 2 copies of Lightning Rod. So this is where the game gets interesting. So it says, when this card enters the grid, you may discard any number of cards, then draw that same number of cards. Let me get rid of some of that glare. So this one's going to let you get rid of cards that aren't going to help you, or aren't going to be beneficial unless you kind of like refill your hand back up. We have 2 copies of Spike. When this card enters the grid, you may draw 2 cards. Pegasus. Adjacent cards that belong to your team cannot be destroyed. So this all revolves around that placement. So if you place him down, you want to place him so he's left to right or up and down from other of your cards so they can't get destroyed. So if you play him, like in the middle of like your 4 spot, if you're playing the advanced one, the other 2 cards can't be destroyed. It doesn't mean they can't be removed or returned to your hand or something like that. They just can't be destroyed. So here we have Moo, like a bull unicorn. He has oats on his arm. It says, when this card enters the battle grid, you may displace any adjacent character card. So, displacing is a new keyword for this type of game, because it's clearly not in the Unstable Unicorns. So, because most of them are. So, adjacent is just any that are left, right, up, and down. Draw, discard, destroy. Those are all the same. So, displace says, move a card to an open space, swap, switches the position of 2, or sacrifice. Move one of your team's cards from the grid to your discard pile. So what this displacing lets you do is basically if like your person's on spot, the opponent's on spot A, if you place him down, you can move whatever card's next to you, you can move them somewhere else on the board. So if it's, I need that spot open, so you can move your guy there, move your opponent somewhere else. Or vice versa, if you move one of your own cards, if you need to move them somewhere else for some reason. Here we have Drifter. When this card enters the grid, you may draw a card for each adjacent basic unicorn card. This one gains bonuses for having the basic ones out. So again, if like you know you've played through most of your basic and that guy's not going to help you because you're not drawing, either they're on the table or they're in your discard pile, that might be a card worth discarding. You have 2 copies of Flare. So special. So when this card enters the grid, you may play a magic card from your hand, and we'll get to magic cards in a minute. So both decks have a bunch of different cards there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ones that are all duplicated of the special, and then they have 4 that are unique. They're still special, but there's only 1 copy of each of these. And the decks aren't the same. So, like the dragons, as we'll see when we get through it, the dragons don't do the exact same things the unicorns do. And that's why I definitely would love to see at least one more expansion. Because I'd like to see them, see what other different stuff a different group could do. Otherwise, I think this game might get old a little bit quicker because it's like, okay, they can only do so much, you kind of learn what they do. It'd still be fun, though. So we have NIMBY. When this card enters the grid, you may displace any character card on the grid. So the other one only did an adjacent one. This one will do any one. Royal Hooves. When this card enters the grid, you may play a basic unicorn from your hand. Marrow. Players on the opposing team cannot play basic character cards adjacent to this card. And Shiny. This card cannot be destroyed. Alright, and then we're going to have magic cards. They're going to have the exact same backs, but the difference is all magic cards are going to be white. So it just helps them stand out. And they have these cool silhouette pictures. So you can play this instead of playing a character. So we have Double Buck. Displace a character card on the grid that is adjacent to a character card that belongs to your team. Then play a basic unicorn. So this might be a card you hold off just until you have a basic unicorn. We have Super Swap. Swap any 2 characters on the grid. We have 3 copies of Hoof It. Swap any 2 adjacent characters. 2 copies of Tail Twister. Displace any character on the grid. And 2 copies of Pointy Poke. Destroy any character on the grid. These guys' magic cards are definitely powerful. And then we have some instant cards, which are black, and it's awesome artwork on these too. And these ones are only going to be able to be played when the effect happens. So they might be able to be played on your turn, might be able to play on an opponent's turn, but they have to wait for that condition. So this says, play this card when a player on the opposing team tries to destroy a character card. Destroy any character on the grid that belongs to the opposing team instead. So the unit counter lets you destroy their cards instead. We have 4 copies of Unishield, which say play this card when any player tries to play a card. Stop that player's card from being played. Send it to the discard pile. So this is like the version of Nay in Unstable Unicorns. And then the big old powerful Unicorn Strike. Play this card when any other player tries to play a card. Stop that player's card from being played. Send it to the discard pile. This card cannot be stopped. So it's basically your nay, but it's like a super nay. So you get a nay, a super nay, and then a bounce card. So those are our unicorns. Now let's look at our dragons and see what different stuff the dragons do. So the unicorns do a lot of stuff about protecting themselves, drawing cards, things like that. Oh, get them out of the box. Alright, so our dragons are going to be the orange ones. So we have 2 copies of Snoozer, 2 Tantrums, 2 Bookworms, and 2 Little Grandpas. And in our duplicate ones, we have 2 copies of Toasty. So this card cannot be swapped. So that kind of helps affect that. We have 2 copies of Trigon. So when this card enters the grid, you may sacrifice it and destroy each adjacent character that belongs to the opposing team. So he'll destroy a lot of stuff by sacrificing himself, but you have to play him in the right spot. We have Zippy. When this card enters the grid, you may swap this card with any adjacent character card. 2 of the Ancient Ones. When this card enters the grid, you may displace an adjacent character card. 2 Flutters. When this card enters the grid, you may play a magic card from your hand. So like the other one lets you play basic unicorns on the unicorn side, this one lets you play some magic cards. 2 copies of Scorch. When this card enters your grid, you may choose a card from your discard pile and add it to your hand. And our single ones are, we have Frankie. Players on the opposing team cannot play basic character cards adjacent to this card. Bernie. When this card enters the grid, you may destroy any character card on the grid. Chonk. This card cannot be displaced. And Sir Scales. When this card enters the grid, you may play a basic dragon from your hand. So some of these are repeated, but that's fine. You have to have some amount of evenness. So our magic cards, we have 3 copies of Wing It. Swap any 2 character cards. We have 2 copies of Wing Tornado. Displace any character card on the grid. 2 copies of Burning Breath. Destroy any character card on the grid. Blaze It. The next player must skip their next turn. And Sharp Sight. Discard a card and search your discard pile for 2 dragon cards and add them to your hand. So I should get some special stuff. So here we're going to get our 4 copies of our Dragon Defense, which are like nay cards. Play this card when the player tries to stop a card. Stop it, send it to their discard pile. We have Dragon Force, which is same thing. A super wing cannot be stopped. And then we have 2 copies of Dragon Drive. Play this card when a player on the opposing team plays a character card. Destroy that card, you may play a basic dragon card from your hand. So, there's our 2 different sets. They fit in here nicely in the box, even though sleeved. I can throw my instructions on. They're going to slide around a bit, but I didn't take the... I don't think I took the insert out. I think this is just how they come in there. Again, it was kind of odd. They had a little paper grid instead of like a little board or something, but I get it because it's so big. I guess I'd rather have a paper one that folds out versus having like 4 tiles that I have to try and hold together because if someone bumps the table and the tiles all scatter, that would suck as well. So I do hope that they make expansions for this. You can play it 3 to 4 players. Play 2 players just fine. It's just slight different rules. If you play 2 players, you get to draw some more cards. There's a different rule. So I do have one more card, and it's a Shiny Angel and this is a pre-order bonus. So I don't know if this will be available elsewhere as another promo card or not, but it was if you pre-ordered the game. So it might still be available if they have some copies from their website, or if you go like a convention, they might have it available. Although I do wish they had made 2 promos, just because now it's like I have 1 extra card that you can add to the Unicorn deck, which unbalances the side of their cards, their decks. I mean, clearly you just take out 1 other card, but which one do you decide to take out? So this says, when a Unicorn enters the grid, each player on the opposing team must discard a card. Or you can just throw it in there and play with it. It's not that big of a deal. But you are gonna end up going through and reshuffling your deck. So the other thing I didn't mention in here, which is a very important rule, is 92 cards. Just so if you're looking to buy sleeves, if you do buy sleeves, you can buy 1 pack for each, and then you're actually gonna end up with extra for each one. So if they release a second couple promo cards, you're fine. If they release another full expansion, you're probably gonna have to buy another set. But I mean, if they release another extra pack of dragons in this, they release another one of different factions, you're gonna have to buy. Hopefully, they'll release new sweeps for that. No, the other thing I forgot to mention is, so when you're trying to win, you're trying to complete 3 goals. So once you complete 1 goal, so player A gets their 3 in a row. If you're just playing like the 3x3 9 grid, they complete their 3 row and they get to remove their 3, and they keep their gold card by them, like face up or whatever, to show that they won it. The other player and any cards that weren't like a winning player didn't use for that grid, you get to stay on the board. So what tends to happen is, basically, player 1 wins a thing. They have to remove 3 of their cards, or 4 if you're playing the advanced rule. Then player 2 automatically, they're like, oh, I need to wait until they move this card to finish off my grid, because maybe they shared a grid space. So then they could win on the next turn. But then the grid's basically empty again. And then it could be player 2 wins, and then the next one, because they're setting up already, and then player 1 gets to come back to win. So you get to leave all your stuff on the board that you didn't erase, which is kind of fun. You don't like clear it off and start over each round, which makes the game definitely interesting. So that is Tic Tac K.O. Dragons vs. Unicorns. I'll be excited to see if they come out with more content for this. Unstable Games is kind of iffy on that. Their Unstable Unicorn series, they keep releasing stuff for. Everything else, it gets maybe 1 expansion, and then if it's not selling well enough, they've abandoned it, even though they've said they're releasing more expansions. So I kind of hope we at least get 1 expansion out of this. Alright, see you guys in the next video. Bye.